And so with that, we're going to now get to the content, to the speakers that you've come to hear in this plenary session. And our first speaker is incredibly special to us here in the US, but also abroad. The Honorable Sethuraman Panchanathan is a computer scientist, he's an engineer, and he's the 15th director of the US National Science Foundation, affectionately known as NSF. NSF is an $11.4 billion independent federal agency and the only government agency charged with advancing all fields of scientific discovery, technological innovation, and STEM education. NSF also leads many bilateral agreements and exchanges on quantum. Dr. Punch, as we call him, is a leader in science and engineering and education. He's got more than 3 decades of experience there, and he's got a distinguished career both in higher education and government, where he's designed and built knowledge enterprises, which advance our research innovation, our strategic partnerships, entrepreneurship, global development, and economic growth. Again, please reference his bio, his full bio in the conference app for additional details. And with that, would you please now welcome Dr. Punch to kick us off here in QWC 2024.
Awesome. Thank you. Good to see you. Thank you. Thank you, Stu. Good morning to all of you. I know that coffee is probably kicking in, and I usually have my chai, and I think it started to act up already. So good morning to all of you. Great to be here with all of you. I just want to quickly go through the journey of NSF in terms of how we look at quantum, or we have been looking at quantum over the last several decades. So I just want to do a quick flyby in terms of those things that you think that, that might be a good context as you are all thinking about partnerships, as you're all thinking about your own forays in terms of what you're doing in quantum computing, whether you're in the United States or you're partnering with us from across the globe. So I term this, this presentation as Innovation Anywhere, Opportunities Everywhere. This is the kind of framing that when I came to NSF a couple of years ago, I was deeply convinced that it's very important to make sure that every ounce of talent everywhere across our country has the opportunity to express itself in its fullest form, and that innovation is not limited to a few geographic locations, as important as that might be, but how can innovation then permeate across all parts of the nation in context, of course, place-based innovation ideas. So this is very relevant to the topic that we are talking about today and what NSF has been up to in terms of the various dimensions. I often say that at the end of the day, it all starts and ends with people. People who are the discoverers, people who are the explorers, people who are the idea generators, people who are the folks that make amazing contributions by their research in academia, or the practitioners, entrepreneurs in industry, and all of those ultimately boils down to the kind of people, and that's what NSF is really good at. NSF is good at how to ensure that we're inspiring generations of talent so that we might get these outcomes that we seek at scale and hopefully at speed also. So that's what I'm going to spend a little bit of time in terms of talking about the America's Quantum Leap. And to start off, you might all have been paying some attention. 2 years ago, President Biden signed into executive order, the congressional act that was passed by true bipartisan support of Congress, which is the CHIPS and Science Act of 2022. And this is a true testament to how science, technology, innovation advances are being looked at by a true bipartisan coming together of what that might mean to unleash opportunities, innovation, and a lot more across the country. And so there were 10 technology areas that were talked about in the CHIPS and Science Act. And of course, quantum was right front and center and a top priority in terms of how we want to advance opportunities, of course, how we want to advance solutions and services and innovations all across the United States. So I think there were at least $150 million that were allocated for quantum specifically in partnership between NSF, DOE, NIST, and others in terms of how we do our part in getting quantum technologies advanced at speed and scale. But I want to start the discussion about quantum, which probably I'm preaching to the choir here, but I will still do it. I often tell people, at least yesterday when I was on the Hill talking to legislators, I always remind them that these kinds of technologies don't just come about in a decade or in a few years. These are several decades of sustained investments by entities, particularly like the National Science Foundation. So if you look at the journey of quantum made possible by NSF, we have almost 7 decades of investments that we can trace back. There are tire tracks to make sure that we understand that these investments that were made 6, 7 decades ago are now coming to fruition. That means that we need to continue to invest, no question about that. How do we get the great innovations that have already been proposed? How that might then result in terms of use-inspired activities that might then be things that we want to advance? How do we build the workforce of the future? How do we do this through a true public-private partnership mindset? What kind of translational research activities that we need to engage in? Now, when we talk about fundamental research activities, when I look at NSF's investments, just in the last year, over $350 million of investments in the quantum area of a $9 billion budget, $9.5 billion budget. And then we have over 1,000 students supported by NSF in terms of the quantum work. I mean, you can attribute about 280 patents in quantum that cite that it was based on NSF's early investments. 44 Nobel laureates, but who's counting? Out of the 262 Nobel laureates that were funded by NSF early in their careers over the last 75 years of NSF's journey. I would say the only agency that has that kind of a track record. Now, when we talk about the Nobel Prize in 2023, clearly, you can look at Dr. Bhavandi and Dr. Bruce. And Dr. Bhavandi and Dr. Bruce were both graduate research fellows as graduate students funded by NSF of the Graduate Research Fellowship. Then Dr. Bhavandi got the Career Award, which is the first grant that people get when they have a fantastic idea, and had 10 more such NSF grants through his career. And Dr. Bruce, for example, had one of those grants called the National Research Traineeships, where he is training unbelievable quality graduate students. And so this is the kind of thing that NSF does really well. Early investments in people that then become tremendous, as I said, idea generators, translators, and winning amazing things like the Nobel Prize, for example. So likewise, recently, just a couple of weeks ago, engineering directorate of NSF introduced something called the Trailblazers Award. We said we'll put in $18 million, $3 million each, 6 of them. These are people who are thinking out of the box, thinking about what might be the kinds of things that people should be focused on as we are thinking about the future in terms of the fundamental work as well as translational applied research work. And I'm proud to say that we have Dr. Chen from Johns Hopkins, funded again for her work in quantum-enabled dial to control biochemical reactions and cell biomechanics. And likewise, we have a faculty member, Dr. Ross from MIT, who is constructing photonic quantum systems by deterministic electron-driven atom positioning. So you see that this is a constant pursuit for us, a constant pursuit of how we might do this at various levels. Now then you say, how might you take that not only at the exploration level, how do you accelerate the research innovation, how do you broaden participation? Because the time that we need to make sure that we are inclusive in our thinking in terms of talent and ideas are democratized, we all know that, but opportunity is not. How do we transfer that kind of situation that we have, transform that kind of situation that we have into one of opportunity for all, and how do you develop infrastructure to be able to then do that effectively? Now, talking about larger conceptualizations, then the NSF Quantum Leap Challenge Institutes are a great example. Significant investments, close to $100 million in these institutes, again, that span across the nation. How do we drive advancements in quantum computation, in sensing, in communication, and a whole host of others in terms of how do you build the kind of infrastructure that is required to be able to ensure that people have the necessary resources to be able to advance their fantastic ideas. How do we build it in a way that there are partnerships underlying that in terms of industry, academia, and the broader international quantum community like some of you who are here? How do you hyperwire these kinds of partnerships to achieve unbelievable outcomes? Just at a glance, if you look at the Quantum Leap Challenge Institutes, 89 academic partners, 67 industry partners, 12 government lab partners, 181 faculty members, 515 postdoctoral and student researchers. You get a sense of it. And look at the geography of this, which spans the nation, which is an extremely important thing that we need to ensure. Likewise, the National Quantum Virtual Laboratory, which was launched recently, $1 million scale, we just announced 5 of them, the first of the kind, decentralized national resource, which is accessible from anywhere because of the virtual nature of that, so that anybody from anywhere, a young talent in rural Montana can still have access to that if they have a fantastic idea or they have the curiosity-driven approach to wanting to pursue the research ideas. So that's the kind of thing that we have. An example of that is a $20 million NSF investment we made at the University of Colorado Boulder. It's an open access national facility for academic, government, and industrial partners, with a primary goal of seeing how can we ensure that we have the workforce development that is necessary for the future of quantum. Likewise, as I said, in order to ensure inclusion, we wanted to build a program called Expand QISC. And this is a $77 million investment. How do we grow the quantum workforce and the research capacity across our country? This year, for example, in 2024, the Expand QISC cohort has essentially 23 research or projects that were funded across the nation. 7 from the EPSCoR states. EPSCoR states are states, if you're not familiar, which are not as well endowed in terms of NSF investments. And so EPSCoR states, 19 emerging research institutions, 7 minority serving institutions, 4 of them historically black colleges and universities and Hispanic serving institutions. In the interest of time, I will dive into the translational aspect of it. The Innovation Core program of NSF and the America Seed Fund, the SBIR program, have been powerful programs in terms of advancing entrepreneurial and small business innovations at scale. And so if you look at that, the Innovation Core in the last 10 years or over 10 years has had 2,500 projects invested, nearly 1,400 startups launched, $3.2 billion in follow-on funding with the investment that was made by the government. And then 2 examples of that is the atom computing, which got the America Seed Fund investments, both phase 1 and phase 2. And they got $975,000 investment in phase 1 and phase 2. Today, they have $90 million raised and 62 employees. This is just one example. If it's IonQ, you will always trace back to NSF's investments earlier in their journey, if you want. Likewise, ionic scale and atom computing, of course, partners in international science with Denmark. And then likewise, in ionic scale, again, we have got investments by NSF. These are sustained investments if we really want to advance these ideas, again, all across the nation, and not leaving good ideas behind for initial resources that needs to catalyze them in order that follow-on investments from venture and other kind of angel investments and so on coming together so that we might build these industries of the future and ensure that the startup ecosystem, the SMEs are vibrant, and therefore we are able to deliver on the kinds of innovations, the products, the services, and as I keep reminding, the people. But all of this also is premised on how strong an international collaboration framework NSF has built. And more recently, since coming in, I've emphasized the importance of building what I call global research centers, tens of millions of dollars of investments in each project, so that we might build these programs with like-minded partners who share our values, aspirations. So we have a number of examples. I invite you to check them out. We also have what is called a Technology Innovation Partnerships Directorate that we launched recently. I would welcome you to check that out. And the Regional Innovation Engine Program, which is stellar. All of that launched at speed in the last couple of years. And I would welcome you all to check that out. And so this is the time where we need to bring all of the assets together. Public-private partnerships, international partnerships, partnerships of every sort, every kind, every mode. Unless we pre-wire ourselves with that kind of thinking, we'll not be able to do justice in terms of innovating at scale and ensuring that those ideas see the light at the end of the day, no pun intended. So these are some of the convergence of partnerships through various sectors coming together, truly a cross-sectoral partnerships. That is what NSF pursues. I've got 27 seconds left, so I'm going to say that I'm very excited. I'm a professor. I'm used to 50-minute lecture sizes. So what I wanted to leave you with is, I'm excited about the 2025 UN, the International Quantum Science and Technology focus. And I think it's a great convening again, which presents us an opportunity to do something really good with this. With that, I conclude. Thank you. And now I'm at 0.